ग्लोबल स्किल डेवलपमेंट मिशन में आपका स्वागत है।
All right, now, before we really dive into Photoshop, I think it's important to lay some groundwork here. This is sort of graphics fundamentals here. I want to talk about the difference between raster graphics and vector graphics. So, if you didn't know this, graphics come in two flavors, raster and vector. You might want to jot some notes, by the way, as we go along here. So let's take a quick look at these two. Let's start off with raster graphics. They are also known as bitmap graphics, depending on who you talk to. Don't confuse that with the bitmap graphic file format, .bmp. I don't know if you've ever seen those before or not. So that's the file format. All right, now, what is a raster graphic? Well, a raster graphic is made up of tiny blocks or tiny points of color called pixels, and raster images are usually continuous tone images. So think of things like photographs and artwork and perhaps things that you scan into your computer, things like this, okay? Raster graphics are also what's referred to as resolution dependent, meaning that when we scale our images larger or possibly smaller, that could result, most likely result, I should say, in a loss of quality. So be careful with this. So let me repeat this. If you take your image, your photograph, and you try and make it larger, oftentimes you're going to blow out the quality. I see this a lot, by the way. People will download an image from the web and then try to use it in a commercial print publication, and it comes out all pixelated or low quality, because you can't take a low quality image and make it a high quality image. That's just how it works. Okay? All right. Now, of course, Photoshop is primarily a raster graphics editor, so Photoshop is going to help us edit and manage things like photographs and artwork and scans and all that great stuff. Photoshop does have some vector tools built into it, but it is primarily built to handle raster graphics. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. Now, over on the vector side of the fence, here's the deal with vector graphics. They are made up of mathematical lines, arcs, shapes, curves, all that great stuff. The good news is that if you and I want to draw a circle, we don't have to break out the scientific calculator. The software is going to handle it all for us, which is great. Okay? Now, oftentimes vector images, vector objects are going to be solid colored objects. Think of things like text or logos or buttons or icons. So maybe look around the room just for a moment and see if you can spot any vector graphics, logos on the sides of products or icons or buttons, things like this. Okay? Now, vector graphics are the opposite to raster graphics. They are resolution independent because they're all based on math. So this means that we can take a logo or take some text and we can scale it larger or smaller, and it has no impact on the quality. Okay? I love working with vector objects and vector graphics for this specific reason. So I could take a logo. If I had a vector version of a logo, I could make it theoretically as large or as small as I wanted to. Because it's all based on math, I don't have to worry about a loss in quality. Now, Adobe Illustrator is primarily a vector graphics editor. So think of Photoshop and Illustrator as brother and sister. Photoshop's really great at handling raster graphics. Illustrator is really great at handling vector graphics, although there is some overlap between the two. Okay? So there we go. I hope that gives you a little bit of clarity in terms of raster graphics and vector graphics. Now, let's take a look at some of the more common graphic file formats that you may encounter in the world of raster graphics.